The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. We got Elliot Rearing and Jacob Tissett. Gentlemen, good morning. How are we today?
Good morning. It's a good day.
It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
This is the weather we've been asking for.
Yes. I just want sweatshirt weather all the time.
That's right.
Not too cold. I don't want 20 degrees.
And then don't pump fake me with a 77-degree Wednesday.
No, yeah,
Be consistent.
I want in between the 50 to like at most 70. At most 70. But ideally 60. 60 is my temperature. If you can get 60 to 55, I'm in the zone. I'm locked in.
We're in a good spot.
That's what I want. And that's what I got.
And this is my favorite time of year because, for one, college football obviously full swing.
That's right.
You already see light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh yeah.
The playoff rankings have come out. The NFL season is well past the halfway point, or at least past the halfway point now. College basketball has officially tipped off. In fact, Keegan Nickoson with the Bearcat Journal is going to join us at when?
10:30. 10:30.
How about that?
Boom.
So I'm learning how big of a college basketball fan you are. I appreciate that. I'm a big college hoops fan myself,
Yes.
so looking forward to
I'll talk a little
bit
bit UC. I'll talk a little bit about UC football with him too. Just a couple questions.
We didn't clear that.
If
Well,
we're asking UC football questions, I might have to hop in.
Well, so I have a plan to ask him a question, and it'll be about your question that you asked earlier on.
Okay.
Is the UC football job a top whatever job in the country? So I'm going to ask him, and we'll see what his opinion on that is.
Ask him if it's a bottom 10 Power 4 job.
I don't think I will do that. I think I'll rephrase it differently. I think the message will get across what we're trying to
I think
ask.
you're going to trap him in an answer that benefits UC.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, we have UC. We'll see. UC.
Oh.
When it's all said and done. By the way, how about our guy Casey? 2 days in a row at work.
Crazy.
Oh,
2 days.
hey, there he is.
Earth shattering.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's right. We're
Employee
done
of the
with
week, baby.
We're
Can
done
we
with
get
the busy
3?
part of Chatterbox. Can we get 3? Yeah.
You think you're going to be here tomorrow?
I think I'm going to be here the whole week.
Roof looking good?
Yeah, it's looking great.
All right. No wind, no rain.
No wind, no rain. Forecast has been great, so I haven't had to worry about any of the leaks and the holes that are still in my roof. But yeah, we're done with the busy part of the year, and now we're heading into the
Whatever
fun
slow
part.
is, yeah?
Yeah, the slow part of the year, which is really the busiest part of the year because football, basketball, hockey, everything.
So last week you missed it, but 100 push-ups had to be completed by Elliot, but Jacob and I, being the good teammates that we are, we tagged in. We helped get the 100 push-ups done. We had 100 likes on the show that day. But yeah, I forgot. That seemed like ages ago, but that was just last week in one of the days that you were off. We got 100 push-ups in on the show. But no, speaking of the show, again, Keegan Nickoson, Bearcat Journal, talk little college hoops and college football on the Bearcat side with him coming up here in a little bit. We're going to get started with Elliot's headlines here in just a few moments. The big noon kickoff has, I shouldn't say everyone ticked off, just Buckeye fans. And I know a lot of people like to pile on Buckeye fans. It's an annoying fan base. I'm a part of that annoying fan base. I know Jacob is too, but I have no problem pointing out when Buckeye fans are being annoying. But I think what they're being annoying about right now is probably one of the most valid things that Buckeye fans could be annoying about. And we'll get to that coming up here shortly as well. Plus, college football with the second playoff rankings reveal coming out later tonight. Of the 12 teams that are in contention for this, and there's more than 12, but of the teams that are in contention for the playoff, how many of those teams are actually good enough to win a national championship? We'll take a look at that as well. Plus, the Dolphins get a big win last night. Monday Night Football, that puts them into the mix, at least mathematically, with the Bengals. How big of a threat are the Dolphins to your Cincinnati Bengals in pursuit of that 7th and final playoff spot in the AFC? We'll get to all of that coming up. But let's kick it over to our guy, Mr. Elliot Rearing, with Elliot's headlines.
Hey!
Elliot loves 3 things: Joey Votto,
David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
That's right, magic voice in the
Being able to
sky.
actually hear that makes a world of difference.
It makes all the difference because I know when to do my finger bit.
Right.
All right, yesterday in the NBA, not a lot of people care, but I'm going to read them anyway. The Nets, 107-105 over the Pelicans. The Rockets take care of the Wizards. SGA, I believe, had his career high, 45 points without Holmgren against the Clippers. 134-128, the final score there.
He was the tallest player in their starting lineup.
Really?
SGA was.
Are you
yes.
serious?
Yeah.
How about that? The Cavaliers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, are 12-0.
Ooh.
It is the best start in the NBA since the Warriors did it back in 2015-2016, which I believe they went. How many games did they lose that year? 4. They lost 8 games. I think 9 games. 8 or 9 games they lost in whatever season that was. So how about that? The Cavaliers might be really good. Outside of that, the Spurs beat the Kings 116-96. It's regular season basketball, so moving on. The Dolphins. The Dolphins took care of the Rams last night. They got a big victory. The first primetime win, I believe, in Tua's career.
Oh, wow.
I think that's correct.
Really?
You have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he was 0-5 heading into that game. Almost certain.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I mean, some of the bigger
Almost
primetime games that they've. I mean, obviously playoff games. Obviously hasn't won there. The Bengals game. I know that's the game that he went out.
Mm-hmm.
They lost that one. So, and again, he's been in the league quite a few years. I'm sure we're missing one. But no, you're right. I don't think he has a win in primetime. As big of a deal as people make about those types of things. Yeah, you're right. I don't think he has.
23-15, the final score. Tua 20 for 28, 207 yards, a touchdown and a pick. There was a little bit of a. I think there was a highlight I saw and happened in the third quarter maybe, and Tua looks like he was trying to tackle off after his interception, and he took a knee to the side of the helmet. And I'm like, Tua, you just got to give up on those plays. We just got to give up on
As soon
them.
as he throws a pick, he should go sit down on the bench.
Let
the other guys take care of it.
If you've seen the first episode of Friday Night Lights, every quarterback needs to just give up after an interception. They need to lay on the ground.
I mean,
and just
Andy
be
broke
healthy.
his thumb and cost the Bengals
Correct.
a hell of a run in 2015.
Correct. When you throw a pick, just give up on the play. Your time's over, and we'll get them next series.
The Dolphins were the only major Florida football team to win this week.
about
1-11
How about
for
that?
Division I colleges and pro teams.
How about that? Devon Achane, his return to action, 12 for 37. Not very good, but whatever. Malik Washington, an 18-yard carry, the rookie. Touchdown, first touchdown of his career. Jalen Waddle, 3 catches, 57 yards. I believe Tyreek Hill, 3 catches for 16 yards.
Oof.
Sorry, he has not eclipsed 100 yards in a game this season, except for the first one, which he was arrested before the game.
I think that was his second touchdown he scored this year, too.
It was the second touchdown, the first one again in week 1, I believe. So good luck there. Yikes. That offense stinks. That team stinks. The Dolphins are dead. Good luck to him, though. On the Rams side, it wasn't pleasant. Matthew Stafford, 32 for 46, 293 yards. Somehow didn't get in the end zone. He did throw an interception. Kyron Williams, 15 for 62. But Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were incredible. So they had a combined 16 catches for 180 yards, roughly. So
That's a weird stat line, too. Like, your quarterback throws for nearly 300 yards. You
Oh, yeah.
have 2 receivers that total for 170 yards, and you can't get in the end zone or score consistently. Like, that's what, like, if Joe Burrow's throwing for 300 and you have 2 receivers that are totaling 170 yards between them, bet your ass there's probably at least 28 points up on the board in that particular situation. So maybe not. Am I wrong? What did I say?
I mean, sometimes your
you'd hope.
quarterback throws for like 400 yards. Your receiver one has like 260 yards. They scored 35 points and they still lose.
I didn't throw out the result. I just meant like
The points
to
would
have
be
that,
there.
To have
The points would be there with
Yes.
that kind of production. Yeah, I do agree.
You guys are a little jumpy. It wasn't a troll. I just meant in general. Like, that's a lot of. Those are big numbers for both wide receivers and, of course, Stafford, and they barely put any points up on the board.
Some teams are able to win when their quarterback throws 5 interceptions.
yikes.
Crazy how that works.
The Bears, they have fired Waldron as the offensive coordinator. So Shane Waldron gone as the Bears. I imagine Eberflus is coming around the bend as well.
I saw some fellow Caleb supporters posting the war is over graphic, reading the newspapers because Waldron is gone. The war is just beginning for my fellow Caleb believers. We need Eberflus gone. We need a lot of help on that offensive line. I'm still diamond hands on that Caleb stock. I'm still believing. It hasn't been pretty so far, but this is right. This is the right move for sure. They interviewed a couple of really, really good offensive coordinators this offseason. Cliff Kingsbury, Zach Robinson, who's currently in Tampa Bay. 2 great guys, probably going to be looking at head coaching interviews in the next year or so, but they went with Waldron, and Waldron absolutely stinks. So glad to get him out of there.
The switching over real quick to baseball, the Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani is a finalist for MVP. We all knew that going in. He is up against Francisco Lindor and Ketel Marte. Those are his opponents in that category. Congrats to him for winning that award, which hasn't happened yet. So it'll be his first in the National League. He won 2 in the American League. The Yankees, Aaron Judge, he is a finalist for AL MVP. This would be his second if he were to win, his second in 3 seasons. Royals, Bobby Witt, and Juan Soto, another Yankee, is in the running for that award. But I believe Aaron Judge, again, will have his MVP. I think those are
Juan
pretty
Soto,
obvious.
sneaky best season, maybe one of the most under-the-radar best seasons of all time. Because
Yep.
of what Aaron Judge was able to put together this year, got a lot of the focus. Obviously, he had a great season, but, I mean, no one talked about Juan Soto for the vast majority of this year, and he's sitting there as an MVP finalist. And if you look at those numbers, he's probably winning it in a lot of years. I mean, he was phenomenal this season.
I know it's a regular season award, but do you think the playoffs have anything to do with this?
They're not supposed to.
Like, because this is where I would say Juan Soto had the more valuable season based on he didn't just roll over in a turtle shell and hide in the playoffs.
Postseason's not supposed to matter, but back in, 2018?
Yep.
Tua won the Heisman Tua lost the Heisman because of his championship performance, and Kyler won it because of what he did in the Big 12 championship. So even though those games don't matter, or aren't supposed to matter to the formula, sometimes, I mean, in all sports, we see them come into play if it's really close. But I think with what Judge did in the regular season, it's so distant that it wouldn't come into play.
No.
Well, the fact also, too, that we're entering the midway. Yeah, it's mid-November, and they're just now coming out with the finalists for everything.
Yeah,
too.
that's
I'm also not a
crazy.
fan of that. I don't. I don't get that. Do they do that just to kind of extend into November to have, like, we're talking baseball?
Well, they announced the winners at like 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. Like,
Yeah,
they
it's
don't
tough.
even do a big ceremony or anything. So if that is the thought process, they do a terrible job at it.
Yeah, like, because it's mid-November, no one's talking baseball right now because of college football, college basketball, the NFL, the NBA, everything's rolling, right? NHL. Is this just like a PR thing of, hey, let's just start talking about the regular season awards in mid-November just so we're talking baseball? I mean, who knows? It's so weird to me. I kind of forgot. I didn't even realize. I'm like, oh, yeah. We hadn't named an MVP or any Cy Youngs or any Rookie of the Year awards, and it's mid-November. But nonetheless, here we are.
Those are your headlines.
There you go.
There's one more.
Was there?
Big Cincinnati headline.
That's right. Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie Goldsmith, probably the best journalist in this city, probably the best source of sports information in this city, has announced he will be leaving the Cincinnati Enquirer. Charlie has been phenomenal on this show. He's been phenomenal on every single show that he's been on. He's always been available for us.
He's the best of the best at what he does.
Good dear friend of the program.
And I'm going to miss him a lot. I know everybody who's a fan of the Bengals and the Reds, they're going to miss him a lot because he was our source of information. The tweet notifications go directly to me. They go to our Chatterbox Sports account. And it's very, very disheartening to see him not be with the Enquirer going forward. But do whatever is best for you. Charlie Goldsmith, you are the best in the business. Thank you very much for all you've given to the city.
Speak for all Cincinnati sports fans. Really hope he stays in the city.
I hope he does,
Whether he
too.
gets another job here or finds out another path to keep doing what he's doing or whatever that is, it'd be a real shame to lose him to a different city. He's absolutely incredible at what he does, and he's given so much to this city in terms of journalism that you don't get a lot of places.
No,
I mean,
he's the hardest working person I've ever seen.
Of all time. He's absolutely incredible, and it'd be a real shame if he left. So hopefully someone is able to figure something out to keep him in Cincinnati because he means so much to these teams and these fans.
Yeah, plus it's rare. I mean, a lot of writers have multiple beats, but to have the Reds and the Bengals and for him to give the equal coverage that he did for both and was as locked in with the Reds as he was the Bengals and vice versa. But you guys talked about it, the fact that, I mean, he always had time, whether it was dialed in with Tom and Luke and Casey or here on off the bench, going back to Trace and everything too. So, like, yeah, I really appreciate him. And yeah, selfishly, we hope that he stays here in Cincinnati
Very
covering
much
the
so.
teams that that we all follow, nonetheless. But did a great job, and looking forward to see where he ends up. No doubt about it. But shout out to our guy, Charlie Goldsmith. All right,
It just means more Gordo for the people, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Press box wag.
It's the season of the rejoice. Thank God.
is he the
Tony
Cubs fan?
Kemp. Tony Kemp. Get ready for Tony Kemp. We all got to learn.
Ellie
from
might
Tony
start
Kemp.
this season in AAA if the Reds go sign some 40-year-old
It's
middle infielders. You never know.
You have Kelsey Conway, the Ravens fan, covering the Bengals, and now him covering the Reds. So it's There you go. But any Xavier grads to cover your Bearcats, by the way?
No, but we've got a Browns fan covering the Bengals.
There we go. Let's go. Aye. All right. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Step away for a few moments. When we come back, Dolphins get that win last night. I do know we have an interview coming up around the corner. We'll step away for a few moments. Let's talk about the Dolphins. They're mathematically back in the hunt for that 7th and final wildcard spot in the AFC, a spot that the Bengals are the favorites to land, assuming they take care of business over the final 7 games of the regular season. But are the Dolphins a threat to your Bengals? We'll discuss when we come back. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Tuesday, everybody. 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking about, look, as frustrating as the season has been for your Cincinnati Bengals, when you look at who they have to fight to get that final playoff spot, I don't like any of those teams over the Bengals. I don't like the Broncos over the Bengals. I don't like the Colts. The Jets were right there. Obviously, the Chargers, Bengals-Chargers, a big one on Sunday night. But a new team has kind of emerged into those list of teams with their win last night over the Rams, talking about the Miami Dolphins. All right, you have, of course, the Dolphins, who are 3-6, Bengals 4-6, Colts 4-6, and the Broncos at 5-5. I'll throw that to you guys. I mean, you guys being, following this, obviously, as you are as Bengals fans, the bottom line is when you hear the Colts, you don't fear them. The Broncos might be kind of growing on some people, it sounds like. But I don't think anyone believes that the Broncos are better than the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, you can never technically count them out at any moment. Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden, everything can click. Sounds like a dumpster fire going on with the Jets, by the way. You have players threatening fans and all this stuff. Wild stuff. But with the win last night, the Dolphins, they have Tua, they have Jalen Waddle, they have Tyreek Hill, they have talent. Where are the Dolphins? How do you stack up the Dolphins in regards to being a threat to your Bengals for that final and 7th playoff spot in the AFC?
Can I answer first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, 0. I'm not threatened by that team whatsoever. If you can't figure out how to get Tyreek Hill more involved in 3 catches against a defense that's not particularly good, I can't help you. They won last night. Good for them. The Rams, we don't know what the Rams are. I think they're pretty much in lingo with the Bengals. I think they're step by step this season, probably with the Bengals. Expectations, get injured, and then you don't have a very good defense. I think they're similar teams. Saying that, am I scared of the Miami Dolphins? No. I mean, do they have to play in the cold yet? Because that's going to come up real soon, and once they have to play in the cold, it's really over. I think they had a hell of a run. I think that final head injury to Tua, I think it's going to be the one that's probably not going to let him get back to 100%. I think he's going to be a fine quarterback for the remainder of his career, but those conversations of him being top 10, I think that's all out the window. I think we know who Tua is, unfortunately, at this point. This is no knock on Mike McDaniel, who I think is a pretty damn good head coach. I just think they have so much to overcome, and you have to try to trust that Tua, like your whole game plan changes. Tua can't scramble anymore. Tua has to play conservative. He can't take hits. Everything changes when your quarterback is pretty much wrapped in bubble wrap. And that's what they are right now. They're a team wrapped in bubble wrap, and they're just trying to make it to the end of this season. They're going to play it safe. They're going to play it conservative, and that's just not the recipe for success when you have 3 wins on the season halfway in. Good luck to them. The Miami Dolphins were a fun story. I'd imagine really soon they're going to start to rebuild that whole thing.
I agree. I'm not worried about the Dolphins whatsoever. I think one more win, 4-5 instead of 3-6, I would have a completely different tune. But I think that hole's just too deep. We've been talking about trying to get to 10 wins to get into the AFC playoffs. I think a lot of us know that number's realistically closer to 9, maybe even 8. But even with an 8-win number for the Dolphins, they only have 2 games of wiggle room. I mean, they absolutely have to dominate the rest of the schedule, and they have a couple easy games. This conversation is going to get louder in the next 2 weeks because they play the Raiders and the Patriots both at home. They're going to win both of those games, and I think the offense is going to look pretty convincing in both of those games. Yeah. And then they go to Green Bay. And if I know anything about Green Bay in late November, I don't think that's a recipe for success for the Dolphins in Tua Tagovailoa. So I think they're going to lose that one. And then at that point, your hole's too deep to claw out of. Even though, the Bengals have showed their flaws all season long. The Broncos, no one really believes in them to make a long run. The Jets, we know how dysfunctional they are. The Chargers probably have one of those spots locked up. I think the hole's just too deep for them at that point after losing that Packers game. And then, not to mention the last 3 games of the season, or 3 of the last 4 games of the season, you go to Houston, you play the 49ers, and you go to Cleveland. Cleveland's certainly not the warmest on December 29th. So that's not going to be an easy game for them. And then we know the Texans and the Niners are legit teams. I think the Dolphins are going to end up with about 7 wins, maybe 8 wins, but I still don't think that they're going to get into the playoffs or really close. I do think maybe at the end of the season, if they're able to upset some teams, we'll see them on the graphic a lot higher than we expected in the hunt. And Dolphins fans can take some solace in that. That'll be fun to claw back at a 2-win season.
You can screenshot that one.
Well, most fan bases would kill for an in the hunt graphic at the end of the season. So I do think they can get to that point. I think they'll salvage a relatively respectable season here. I don't necessarily agree with what you said about Tua. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be really, really good. At least in those warm weather games like we've seen before. And I think he's going to put up good numbers. They're going to be able to beat some teams and put together a respectable season after the abysmal start, but not the playoffs. The hole's too deep.
So Tua comes back 2 weeks ago or the week before. They put up 27 points against the Bills. And we could all agree. I mean, they lost by 3 to the Buffalo Bills. And, he throws up 230-plus yards, a couple touchdowns. They ran for 150-plus yards, and they have the 7th-ranked defense in the NFL. That's why I can't count them out. I know we're doing a lot of it's cold and all this.
Yeah.
For right now, I just think because, I'm not the Colts. I'm not worried about the Jets. I don't think are fighting back in. I think the Broncos I think that'll even out at some point. If the Dolphins, let's just say the cold doesn't play a factor in this. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not that when the season gets cold, all of a sudden they decline. Yeah. We also saw, you're very low on Tua. I mean, Tua, look at the night and day difference when that offense, when he's not out there. Everyone thought it was Mike McDaniels that was propping him up. It looks like it was the other way around because when he's back out there, they're a much different animal. I just think when you look at the Dolphins as a whole, from the quarterback to the receivers to the run game and that defense, I think on paper, theoretically, they should be better than the Bengals. But I don't think anyone's going to pick the Dolphins over the Bengals. But if Tua plays the way he's supposed to and he does stay healthy, I do think they're a threat to the Bengals from that perspective. They have 2 with the Jets, as you talked about, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Patriots. Those are 5 winnable games. Can I sit here and say they're going to win all 5 of those games? I don't know, but they're going to be in position to do so. And if they do that, that's 9 wins. We were talking yesterday, what's that magic number for the Bengals to get to?
It's only 8
have
wins.
What's that?
5 more wins is only 8 wins.
Where are they at right now?
3 and 6.
Oh, they're 3 wins. I'm sorry. I thought they were at 4. So 5 more wins is at 8. They would have to.
win one of the. That's what I mean. I think if they were 4 and 6, I have a completely different tune.
The Niners too. Don't know who the hell they are.
I think they're starting to hit their stride.
The Christian McCaffrey thing is interesting, but no, Tua. Also the health. For me, it's more about the health than it is the talent for you and the cold. It's more health, and we see how reckless he can be when he's out there. By the way,
that's where I'm saying I don't think they're going to let him be reckless. And if he is reckless, we know what happens when he does that. So I just don't think it's a recipe for success. You have to change your game plan with the idea that this guy literally can't get touched, and that's a hard thing to ask. And we can sit here and talk about the Dolphins winning 5 or 6 games here. There's no way that offense is going to win 5 games.
Why are you so down on that offense?
Huh?
What is wrong with that offense?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tyreek Hill has been nothing. The whole offense has been terrible. I know he's been out.
The offense has been really good with Tua in. I mean, they scored 23 points last night. They scored 27 against the Bills with Tua in. They looked good at the beginning of the season with Tua.
I mean, Tyreek Hill just had 4 catches, 80 yards against the Bills the week before. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Tyreek has been quiet. He hasn't had over 100 yards.
Achan's been great, though.
But I'm with you. I think for Tyreek has to be Tyreek for them to get back into this and stay in it. But I guess I'm just not seeing what you're seeing, I guess, when it comes to Tua. Because they're night and day differment when he's out there.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
The Dolphins with Tua are a million times better. But when they didn't have Tua, they were scoring 4 points a game, 10 points a game.
Yeah, it was a bit.
It's not even close. I'm just saying that elite level explosive offense, I don't see that anymore. If it happens, then it happens, I guess. And you can rattle off a couple wins against the Raiders and the Patriots, no doubt about it. But I have a hard time believing that's a team that can win 5 more games going forward. I just don't see it. Well, I could be wrong. I can certainly be wrong. But, I mean, New York in the cold. You play Cleveland in the cold. You have the Packers in the cold. I don't know. It's just hard for me to sit here and say that the Dolphins are going to be good down the stretch. I think we'll see what happens going forward into next year. But do you think the Dolphins organization is, like, confident in Tua?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You think that's still a thing? Okay.
I would be.
Confident from a ability standpoint, the health standpoint, I think maybe they're kind of questioning now a little bit too, especially with as much guaranteed money.
I don't
as they
know
gave
that
him,
they're
but-
questioning it any more than they did when they offered him a contract.
I mean, because I guess he had the same.
Like, it was
concerns
this.
coming
You
in.
knew that this was a risk when you just paid him $180 guaranteed $1 million.
Yeah.
Like, I have to feel like they're okay with it. Did
Yeah.
you want it to happen this early into the contract? Absolutely
Probably
not.
not.
But I think they knew this was a risk and probably knew it was likely to happen again at some point. So I think they have to be okay with it, at least to some degree,
Yeah.
and be willing to rock with him as their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye. Like I said, you're right, Jake. There's going to be a lot of graphics over the next couple of weeks where mathematically they're right there.
Yeah.
They're right in it. And that's going to be a talking point. I just think I fear if I was a Bengals fan, I would fear them more than the Colts and even more than the Broncos at this point, even though the Broncos have a 2-game jump on them.
No, I think Broncos are more scary than them as of this moment.
The Broncos at 5-5, they just have given themselves so much room to play with.
Correct.
They have a margin for error.
Like Bo Nix can have 3 games with 2 picks that they lose, and they could still win 9 games and get in. Like they as long as they compound their mistakes into just 2 or 3 losses instead of spreading them out against the rest of the season, they're going to be fine. I think the Broncos.
The final wild card spot is going to go to a bad team. If we get out in front of that right now, then we can all rationalize it. The Bengals aren't a good team. I think they're better. I think you're more afraid to play the Bengals, as you mentioned,
No question.
than the other teams. But they're not a good team, and neither are the Broncos, and neither are the Dolphins, neither are the Jets and the Colts. None of those teams are Super Bowl favorites, contenders, whatever word you want to use. But in terms of the Bengals right now, honestly, you just got to take care of business.
Yeah.
You just got to focus on your games, pray you get to 9 wins, and we'll see what happens there.
None of this playoff picture or other teams' remaining schedule, conference record, none of that matters if the Bengals lose games they're not supposed to lose.
Correct.
You got to win your games. And I think that's the thing a lot of Bengals fans are combing over. And that's the good thing about being fans, not being on the field, is you can look at it.
That's right.
Hopefully the players aren't doing that, because the most important thing in the Bengals playoff picture is to win the teams that you play any given Sunday.
That's right.
All right, fair enough. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Again, the Dolphins making things a little bit more interesting last night with that win over the Rams, something that we'll continue keeping an eye on moving forward. Again, a big win for the Bengals coming up Sunday Night Football. Bengals, Chargers, obviously a lot on the line there. The Bengals have obviously the Chargers coming up, and then who they have after, why am I drawing a blank? Who the Bengals
Chargers
have?
bye week.
Chargers bye week Steelers.
Steelers, yeah. Interesting little
So if you can go 2-1 in the Chargers, the bye week, and the Steelers, I love our chances.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little college
We're gonna lose the bye
basketball.
week.
We're gonna lose the bye
Keegan Nickoson with the Bearcat Journal. He's going to join us coming up here around the corner. Talk a little college hoops with the best college basketball team in the state of Ohio.
I think so.
All right,
I think so.
we'll
We get
talk-
to say that this year.
We'll talk Bearcats.
At least as of right now on November 12th.
when we come back.
Now I'm here. Now I'm on. Now I see the TV. Welcome on in, ESPN 1410 Wing AM. We are off the bench, as you know. I am leading this segment. I am. Shout out to me.
I'm the captain of the ship now.
Yeah, that's right. We now welcome on very, very, very special guest, Keegan Nickoson, Bearcat Journal. Keegan, I'm not going to lie, you look a little bit like the Rock meme. You know the Dwayne the Rock meme? When he's in, you look great, buddy. How are you doing?
Does he have the fanny pack? He
Yeah,
needs the
you
fanny pack.
need the fanny pack, but you look good. You look great.
You were too quick with that, and I didn't even realize it. That's a credit to you. I mean,
Yeah,
you just
thank you.
absolutely killed me.
Please credit to me. All right. So I got a lot of questions for you. We'll start with a couple football ones. I just want to rattle a couple basic football ones off, just off the front. So I feel like the team coming into this season, I specifically did not have a lot of hope. I didn't have pretty much any expectation whatsoever. But it feels like they've brought some life back into the city. I think it's been a fun season, if nothing else. After the Pitt loss, I think everybody was saying, hit the panic button, fire Satterfield. That has slowly calmed down now. Do you feel better about the state of the program as of this second on November 12th than you did before the season?
Before this season, not exactly.
Okay.
I think the thing with Brendan Sorsby, he gave me a lot of hope that Cincinnati could be a good football team, just with how accurate he was, how he stood in the pocket. That's really what Cincinnati was missing. And coming into the early parts of the season, he threw the ball really, really well. And then there were some parts where the offense just wasn't moving as well, but you weren't seeing that many bad mistakes. And then against West Virginia, you just got basically the worst Brendan Sorsby and didn't get really any good. Because the thing about him is he's a playmaker. He tries to make those plays, and sometimes there's mistakes. Sometimes he makes those great plays. But against West Virginia, it was just bad. And it's starting to be a trend where coming from the UCF game to now, Cincinnati's passing game is just struggling at the end of the day. And they're not stretching the ball downfield. It's really, really stuff where they just keep on repeating the thing of, we're going to take what the defense gives us. And yeah, that makes sense. But if you want to win a Big 12 title, if you want to contend for a Big 12 title, which is their goal, you kind of have to be able to stretch the ball downfield. I think you have the weapons to do it. And Xavier Henderson and Joe Royer, and then two solid receivers, Antonio Johnson and Jamoy Mays. And you have the quarterback to do it. You should have the running game to offset it, but it's just not happening right now.
3 games left in the regular season. Is there added pressure to get to a bowl game? Like if you look at Scott Satterfield right now, we can call last season a wash. I don't expect Scott Satterfield to come in right away and fix everything. This year, I think there was a little bit of hope that they could get to a bowl game. If they were to, and this is why I kind of asked you at the beginning, just, what are your vibes regarding the program? Because if you would have told me that, after the Pitt loss, the Bearcats would still be a bowl eligible team, I would have kind of laughed at you. But now it seems like you gave us the hope. We've seen the best of Brendan Sorsby, and now it's starting to slowly tilt back the other way. How much added pressure is there to get to 6 wins?
I think that was what a lot of fans needed to see this year to kind of be able to go into next season happy that Sat's the guy. And now you're at 5-4, and you're staring 5-7 right in the face. I mean, you have to play Iowa State and Kansas State on the road, which are 2 extremely tough environments. Iowa State's reeling, so you can look at that and say, they might not be as good. Or you can look at it and say, they're coming off 2 losses, and we're playing them on the road. And then you have to go to Kansas State, Manhattan, and then you have to face a TCU team that I think will probably be battling for bowl eligibility right there too. Like, they should probably be at 5 wins as well when they come to Nippert Stadium. So when you look at that Pitt game, I was still confused about that. I think the defense, they were just trying to get their footing. You go and beat Miami, and then you scratch some wins together. And I was looking at, okay, Texas Tech, I think they could go in and win that game. I think that they could go in and beat Colorado. And now it's there was a point where I was thinking 7 to 8 wins possibly, but now best case scenario the rest of the way is probably 6. So you have to beat TCU and get to the bowl game, or there's going to be a big smirch on this season. And Scott Satterfield is going to go into next season with way less momentum than originally thought.
You mentioned Brendan Sorsby. Again, he's been incredible this season. I don't think Brendan Sorsby was going to be as good as he was. Is there any fear that he's going to leave and take more money elsewhere? Do you think? I mean, I hope he's here forever, at least for the next couple of years. But there's in this new age of college athletics, I'm always scared that when a player has a good season, he's just going to transfer out.
I mean, there's always that fear with basically every player, especially with how volatile it is. I think that UC is very, very confident that he's going to be back next season. I think he has very, very good relationships with the people at UC, with Coach Satterfield, with the staff, the entire offensive staff, the recruiting staff. I think he loves it at Cincinnati, and I think he's a loyal guy. He was loyal to Tom Allen, and then Tom Allen gets fired, and he sees where he's at, goes to Cincinnati. And there was the report that when he committed to Cincinnati, before he was signed, before he was enrolled in classes, Lincoln Riley and USC reached out to him, tried to get him on campus for a visit. And he said, no, I'm committed to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So if he's not going to leave, then I'm pretty comfortable and I'm pretty confident with him coming back to Cincinnati. But the kid's childhood team was Oklahoma. And I'm guessing they're going to be wanting to spend a lot of money on a quarterback, and they're going to see this kid and maybe go, hey, we could offer him a lot of money. But I think he's a loyal guy, and I know Cincinnati loves him, and I think he loves them back. And I think he'll probably be wearing a Bearcats uniform next season.
Let's hope. I hope and I pray. Switching over to basketball. This is what I want to talk about. No offense to the football team, but I kind of knew they weren't fighting for a championship. So I'm on to basketball. The Reds kick me in the face. The Bengals punch me in the liver. And I'm just getting kicked around by every sports team in this city. All I have left is Wes Miller. That's all I have. He has to deliver me a good season. We have to get back to the tournament or I'm going to cry. I think this is the most excited we as a fan base has been in maybe like 10 years. I don't know how many years it's been. But we heard some news yesterday that probably isn't in the list of exciting things that could happen. Dan Skillings will be missing some time. A minor knee surgery is what I was told. It sounded like it's not a big thing, but there's always worries, especially when you start talking about a knee. So how worried are you about Dan Skillings going forward? When do you think we could expect him back?
I'm not too worried about it. It's never good when your guy's not completely healthy. You want him healthy. There's no question about that. I just think the important thing is the Big 12 slate and getting him back for conference play. I think the timeline right now kind of angles at a return around the Xavier game, which I think that would be massive to have him back for the X game. But their non-conference schedule isn't extremely difficult. Dayton is a much different team than it was last year. I think Georgia Tech lost to Columbia maybe, and Villanova also dropped a bye game at home. So those non-conference games, I think UC might be able to manage, but losing Dan Skillings is a really big piece. You saw it in the Morehead State game. I mean, they tied Morehead State in rebounding, and UC was one of the best rebounding teams in the country last year. He's such a big piece in that part of the game. But I just think you need him back for the conference slate. That's what you have to worry about. That's where you're going to make your NCAA tournament bid and your resume for an NCAA tournament. It's getting to 12 or 13 wins in the Big 12, getting to that 5th or 6th spot in the Big 12, and just comfortably being in the NCAA tournament mix and not really being on the bubble. So I'm not too worried about it. If it was a longer thing where he was going to return in the middle of Big 12 play, kind of like a CJ Frederick situation last year, then it'd be different. But I think the kid's been super positive on Instagram saying, I'm going to be back soon. You got to go through trials and do this stuff. He's not down on himself. So I'm pretty confident that he'll be okay.
Other injury news, Day Thomas. Can we expect Day to return on Friday?
I think Coach Miller said after the Morehead State game that he's optimistic that he'll play. He hadn't really been involved in practice, and Miller said that he's going to have a different role, so he'll probably be practicing this week, and I would expect him to be back Friday against Nichols.
I don't know if there's a 6th Man of the Year award in college basketball, but if there was, could Day Thomas win that award? I feel like this guy, and again, last season he was spectacular, and slowly you saw Jizzle take over the starting point guard role, the starting guard role, and Day kind of shifted back. I know Day got hurt towards the end of last season as well, but I think this year he is so valuable to the depth, at least, of this team. It's absolutely incredible. If there was a 6th Man of the Year award, would he win it?
Well, first I'll say you thinking he was playing incredible was in the minority of UC fans.
Okay. It was just the layups. There was just a couple layups, and if he could make a layup, he'd be the best player in the country. But he missed a couple layups here and there. And when I say here and there, I mean like he missed like 8 layups a game. But outside of that, defensively, he was a rock star. And I think towards the back half of that season, he was very good. I think he's a valuable asset to the team.
That was I completely agree with you, but that was the biggest storyline last year was everyone wanted Jizzle to start. And I mean, no one could see how good Day was defensively. And it's even more important this season not having John Newman to have that defensive stopper. Dylan Mitchell is playing really good right now. When you add in Day Thomas, that's going to be even bigger. and I was talking to my boss Chad about this, but
good guy, Chad. That guy's a good guy.
Great guy. Chad. He's a great guy. But one of the biggest things about this team and just how deep they are is you had Jizzle James overtake a point guard who's only gotten better.
Yeah.
Like Jizzle James just took his spot, and Dede Thomas is still the same or better player than he was last year when Cincinnati almost made the tournament. So I think getting him back will be huge. And then just imagine being one of those point guards, one of those shooting guards.
Oh, yeah.
And, you see Jizzle go to the bench and like, okay, I get a little bit of a break here. And then you have to face a fully rested Dede Thomas defensively. I mean, that's just going to be tough. I would not want to be that guy. So he's going to be a huge piece. I think he's a juice piece for this team. And Wes Miller loves playing him.
Love it. One guy, speaking of guys we want to see more of, Rayvon Griffith. That's a name I want to hear. Shout out to Euler. My mom teaches at Euler. He went to Euler. This is a guy we've wanted to see for a long time. Does the Skillings injury open the door for him? Are we going to see more Rayvon this season than maybe expected?
I think probably. It obviously shortens their rotation. I think him and Josh Reed might be fighting for that 11th to 12th spot at the end of the rotation. But I think you're going to see Connor Hickman start. I believe that's what happened against Morehead State. I think you're going to see Connor Hickman start for Skillings. But I think just naturally you're going to see more Rayvon Griffith. He's just got to be where he needs to be defensively, and he's got to make the plays that he's supposed to make. Yeah. That end of the rotation spot, you don't need to go out and take 4 threes, take a bunch of shots, and try to score 20 points. You just have to be where you're supposed to be and do your job. And I think Rayvon Griffith is able to do that. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely motivated and extremely driven. I don't know if there's a player on UC's team that wants UC to win more than Rayvon Griffith. Just being from Cincinnati, having to wait the entire year. I remember I would get to games early, and he would be out before the game during his red shirt year, and he'd be doing a full workout with Andre Morgan, the assistant coach, getting a full sweat before the game. And just seeing all that stuff that he has to do in the dark, I'm really rooting for the kid to get on the floor. And if this is an opportunity for him to do so, that's great. But this team is so loaded that when Dan Skillings comes back, it's just honestly going to be tough for him to get those 10 to 12 minutes that a lot of fans want him to get.
Simas Lukosius. This is a guy I think coming into last year I didn't have any expectation for whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Then, and I'm not going to make a joke. This isn't a joke, but I will say ever since he was hit by a car, he's been absolutely incredible. He has been phenomenal. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to be as big of a playmaker as he's been. He's been the go-to scorer. He's been the go-to shooter. Is this what Wes Miller thought he would be? Was this the plan for Simas Lukosius when he transferred in?
Yeah, I think after he got hit by a car last year, he was not healthy. Like he was probably playing at 80-85% with that shoulder, and it definitely impacted his ability to shoot the ball. Then you see at the end of last year, just went absolutely crazy. And I remember I was doing research for a bold predictions article, and I was like, what if Dan Skillings can figure out his 3-point shot? Like I think he made 16 of 35 threes or something around that range in the last 8 games of the season. I'm like, was that UC's highest volume 3-point shooter? And then I go and look at Simas and I see, oh no, he made 34 of 81 in the last 8 games last year. Like the dude was on a tear, and you kind of got a peek into what he could have been if he didn't get hit by a car. Obviously there's first year in a program, you're getting connected to the coaching staff. Sure. You're trying to figure out how to play with your players. But if he could have been, 4 to 5 games into the Big 12, what he was at the end of last season, those last 8 games, UC probably makes the tournament. He was just so good offensively, and you see it going through the first 2 games this year. The most interesting thing to me is he was kind of just an outside threat last year. He wasn't really driving in, getting inside. And I asked Wes Miller about that, and he said after the Morehead State game, might have been after the Pine Bluff game, but he told me, I was talking with Josh Leffler last year, one of our assistant coaches, and we both agreed, Simas is probably our best ball handler and scorer in action. So we need to get him inside. It just wasn't there last year, but you're starting to see it now that he can really score from anywhere.
Again, I hate to keep rattling off these names, but I'm excited. I'm an excited little guy. Jizzle, Dylan Mitchell. If you had to give me, I know the season's already started. If you had to give me a preseason MVP of who you think is going to be the most valuable player for this Bearcats team in this season, who do you think it would be?
Is it most valuable or most important? Most valuable.
See, this is a brutal distinction. Most valuable. Most valuable.
Most valuable right now, just based off the 2-game return, I'll say Dylan Mitchell.
Okay.
He's an inside threat offensively more than I thought he'd be. And that's probably me just not really knowing his game a ton coming out of Texas. I'll be honest, I always just thought of him as an explosive lob threat. But he's creating stuff inside. And he's finishing around the rim with post moves. And then defensively, he's a stopper, and he can rebound with the best of them. So I think just in terms of being able to do a little bit of everything and doing it really, really well and providing energy and being that guy of saying, this guy could play in the NBA. Yeah. Being that guy that can go and play in the NBA, big for recruiting for UC. I think this year it'll be Dylan Mitchell.
You mentioned the lob. Can we stop that? Can we stop the lob, Keegan? Because listen, I love a good lob to Aziz every now and then. But it felt like last year our boy Dan Skillings and Day the name of the game for the offense was let's see how high of a lob we can toss up and hope Aziz comes down with it. I need the lob to be perfected this year if we're going to run the lob play.
It's been basically perfected through 2 games. They haven't missed any.
Well, I mean, we're playing, no disrespect to the strength of schedule here so far, but these 2 teams haven't exactly been tournament teams. So we'll see. I just want a little bit better of the lob. That's all I ask. And real quick, I have 2 more questions, just because I know we're running low on time here. Aziz, I think depth of the big man has been a big thing this season. How important is Aziz Bandaogo?
Well, that's why I asked the most important player question, because it might be Arrington Page behind Aziz Bandaogo. What is he going to be able to do backing Aziz up at the 5? He didn't do great rebounding against Pine Bluff, but he went 7 for 8 from the free throw line against Morehead State, and I think he had 13 points. So he was definitely better. There's just things defensively that Aziz can do that a lot of people don't appreciate until you see a guy like Jameel Reynolds in there and a young guy like Arrington Page in there who will struggle in places that Aziz just wouldn't. But if Arrington Page can be a guy where there isn't too much of a drop-off, because there's naturally going to be a drop-off from one of the best big men in the country, at least best 7-footers in the country, I think that's huge for Cincinnati. And then for Aziz Bandaogo, it's just about staying healthy. He's going to give you what he's going to give you. He's going to bring you 8 rebounds, and he's going to get 8 to 10 points and be a factor in the lob game. And he's going to open up stuff for Simas Lukosius and Connor Hickman and Jizzle James throughout the entire offense because of how much attention he demands. So I think if Arrington Page can back him up well and Aziz can just be himself, that's going to be one of the most important things for the Cincinnati team this season.
I noticed you said lobs again. We're just going to keep lobbing. That's okay. It's going to be a lob season. That's all right. Final question. This is for my guy, Jacob, who's in the room with me right now. Do you think the Bearcats football job, do you think that's a good job in this 2025 college football landscape? Do you think it's a good job in the Power 4?
I think it's a job that people want, as it has been throughout its entirety. There's been some pretty good coaches that have come through Cincinnati, and they don't stay because, honestly, why would you? If Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame is coming and calling, you're going to go and coach there. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. They're going to pay you more money. You're going to be able to recruit, and it's going to be a little bit easier to win. But, I mean, this is a job that a lot of people want. It's in a big city, so it's easy to recruit in that way. Nippert Stadium is an awesome stadium, and you're in an area where you can recruit effectively. Now, if you're comparing it to one of the best jobs in the entire country, then no. And it's just like the recruiting thing. Recruits are going to go to Notre Dame, Michigan, and Ohio State before they go to Cincinnati. But with Mark D'Antonio coaching here, Brian Kelly coaching here, Luke Fickell coaching here, it's obviously a place that kind of fosters success. So I think a lot of people see that and will be interested in it. So yeah, I think Cincinnati's a good job. I don't see how you could say it's not.
Yeah, so you would say Jacob's 100% wrong then. That's what I learned from that.
Not 100% wrong.
He's
just coming
100%
from a
wrong.
vantage
No, stick with it.
He's
Stick
an
with your
Alabama
guns.
fan.
All right, that's it. Keegan Nickoson, Bearcat Journal. Thank you very, very, very much for coming on, talking Bearcats with me. And also, if you could get a picture of yourself compared to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson side by side, you really need to do that. I'm going to see if I can make an edit about it because it's absolutely uncanny right now. But thank you Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Keegan. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Elliot. I appreciate it.
We'll see you, buddy. All right, ESPN 1410, Wing AM. We went over. I went over on that one. So we're going to take a break. Off the bench, Chatterbox Sports. We'll see you in a bit.
All right, we welcome you back, Justin Kenner, JC.
Who?
Who's
That's
JC?
rough.
Who?
That was
You've been
rough.
doing so good at the names.
I know.
You say Jason?
I said JC, not
my
Casey.
God.
Everyone wants
I
to coach at
combined-
UC until a blue blood like Wisconsin comes calling. The cheese up there, man. Everyone says Wisconsin's one of the best jobs in the country. No wonder you'd leave to go there.
Justin Kidder, Casey McCollister, Elliot Ring, Jacob Tissett. And Jacob Tissett couldn't even get through the return. He was fuming. He was shaking over there with rage.
Look. I have a take that people in the city don't like, and then we continue to ask fans of that team whether they agree with the take or not, and they unanimously don't. What a shock. You ask fans of any other
I
team,
got to
they
go
usually
find
do.
an Alabama person, and we'll ask them. I got to go find a different Alabama person.
Yeah,
Maybe
go for it.
if we can get Saban on. You got Saban in the Rolodex there?
Maybe we could. Maybe
Let
we
me
could.
go. Take
Yeah,
a
I think
spin.
you probably have him too. It just
I bet he changed his number.
okay.
Maybe
Let's
give it a
just give it a
shot.
call.
Maybe
We
give it a
could,
shot.
listen, I'm in it to win it, baby.
Is Ohio a one-party state? Like, can we just
I don't know.
Can we just
actually.
call him and start recording?
I don't know. Actually, that's a good question.
We'll see.
And we could lie too. We could say like we're like some sort of insurance company, and we're trying to sell them an insurance.
I think when you start lying,
Oh, that's
it
bad.
starts getting illegal.
All right, then don't lie. Don't lie. We'll be honest. I'm sorry.
So what? His response was what? So how good of a job is the Bearcats football?
It's a good job. People want the job. He said people want the job. He said Jacob's not 100% wrong, but he said that it's a desirable job, and it always has been.
It was more desirable just a few years ago.
It's been a desirable job. It's been a desirable job.
Well, I will say, when we had that discussion last, we were all burying the Bearcats program. They're having a better season than we had anticipated. They had a shot to take advantage of a weak Big 12 this year. The Big 12, BYU. Can we just make sure that BYU is not the team representing the Big 12 in the playoff? Like, I'm a brand snob. I know I'm not tuning in for BYU.
Come on, yeah, you are.
I just can't. Does BYU get you excited?
Does BYU get me excited? I have a BYU shirt in the mail to my house. It's on the way. Jake Retzlaff rocks. He's one of 3 or 4 Jewish students at BYU. He's their starting quarterback. It's incredible. I love
T-shirt
BYU.
like take over or
Oh, yeah.
take off on campus.
They were selling them like it was vintage. I guess that's what happens when you get out there in the middle of the woods in Utah. But they were like Catholics versus convicts, selling these shirts out of cardboard boxes at games to the students. And they ran out the first week. And then they started printing them when they got it licensed by the school. They were selling them in the books. I don't know if it was in the bookstores, but in like actual school stores and stuff. It's licensed now. They're selling them online. It's awesome. I think it's a lot of fun. I think BYU is a fun school. And honestly, the only reason that I am rooting for them in the Big 12 is unless Colorado can figure it out, which they've really struggled against top-tier talent really since Deion got there. They've been able to dominate or at least get wins over the middle and bottom tiers. But when they play the better schools, even Nebraska, when they were rolling earlier this season, stomped on Colorado. So I don't know that there's a team in the Big 12 that's fun to watch in the playoff. Like, I think any of these 4 seeds, or even if they're not the 4 seed, if Boise State's ranked above them, I don't think any of these teams are exactly riveting to watch in the first round of the playoff, especially if they don't get that bye and they're playing as the 5 seed. If they're playing the group of 5 or so, I guess the group of 5 would then get the bye.
Yeah.
But if the Big 12 champion is hosting an Alabama or a Georgia, I don't know how many people are watching that game. It's going to be a 15-point spread. Like,
Everybody's watching.
So,
oh yeah, they're all standalone.
I just saw a little bit ago.
Are they all standalone?
I believe so.
Good. That's how it should be.
Was it Danny Cannell who I'm trying to find the tweet. I'm mad that I already scrolled past it, and I was about to respond to it and just stopped. But it annoyed me already because we're doing this thing. He said he's complaining that right now everyone's already starting to push in more Power 4 schools over the non-Power 4 schools, and he's already getting upset about it. And I'm like, I don't know why we do this in sports where – like, we understand that, like, we look at a 2-loss team and just say, in a 2-loss team, there's going to be some 2-loss teams that make the playoff.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for a 3-loss team to get in, but, like, I don't know what Danny Cannell's upset about. Like, it's like he doesn't comprehend how sports works.
Well, we knew that last year.
And he was the one that, everyone was going at, with him. Yet that whole Florida State thing was just wild. I mean, especially because what's happened since, the way it blew up in Danny Cannell's face.
They gave Mike Norvell so much money. So much.
He has like a
his buyout is
$68
million. They're 1-9. like, what are we doing, man? Oh, it's so fun to watch. I hate them. I hate them.
But like getting mad last year about that was just insane. But like, let's not act like because he's mad that there's a lot of talk of the SEC still getting a lot of schools in. I'm like, and that's what we always do. We just get mad at the SEC, right? When in doubt, get mad at the SEC. The conference that puts the most players in the NFL, the conference that just does nothing but win national championships. Michigan finally put an end to a streak of 4 straight years where the SEC won a national title, and it featured the likes of LSU and Alabama and Georgia. It just kept going and going. The SEC dominates the scene. Getting mad at the SEC is just insane to me that we're still doing this in 2024, heading into 2025. We cannot sit here and act surprised that the best conference in football is going to get the most teams in the playoff. Even though I don't know how many national title contenders actually exist in the SEC, the best teams, there are more playoff-worthy teams in the SEC than the Big Ten.
They're going to get the same amount of teams in.
The Big Ten and the SEC?
They're both going to get 4, I think.
So the Big Ten, obviously, and Indiana's a lock.
I believe. I mean, if they beat Purdue, they're a lock.
And we got to get past
that. You have to win your games, but they're going to be a 3-touchdown spread.
What's worse, playing a bad team like Purdue before Ohio State or after?
It depends on where it is. If it's on the road, I think it's way worse after. If it's at home, I don't think it necessarily matters.
Because you play Purdue before. Now they have a bye week coming up.
Indiana plays Purdue at home. That is massive for them. Massive for them.
Because if you have you get up emotionally for Ohio State, and I think some of that played a role.
It's the biggest game in program history.
Yeah, and I think I think that Alabama, one thing that led to them losing to Vanderbilt, if they play Vanderbilt again 5 straight times, these exact rosters, Alabama lose to Vanderbilt again?
In 5 games, maybe not. I think that's probably what would you say? 70, 75% Alabama win?
Yeah.
You play 100 times, Alabama wins like 75 of them?
I would say even maybe more, but yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because I think that and no one feels bad for Alabama. No one needs to. But they played Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt 1 week after playing Georgia in their biggest game of the season. So emotionally, it's easy to get up for that Georgia game. And then you have to follow it up less than a week later going on the road at Vanderbilt. Now, I know we could do this. This isn't, this Vanderbilt team's not as bad as in the past. I get that. But I do think that plays a role. So luckily for Indiana, that's not the case here. But Indiana has to just not get blown out. That's kind of been an unwritten rule too.
I
They're allowed to lose.
I think Ohio State could beat them by 40 if they're 11-1. They're in.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't think
there's not enough. There's not enough teams. If the country had shaken out differently, I agree. I 100% agree. But there's straight up not going to be 1-loss teams.
How many undefeated teams are there? 2 still? 2? Is it 2 or 3?
Well, they have Oregon.
You have Oregon, Indiana,
Army,
BYU.
Okay, 4.
That matter. I mean, Army, yeah, but
okay, so 3.
Well, if they beat Notre Dame.
If they beat
Army,
Notre Dame.
A day after
someone said if Navy beats Notre Dame.
A day after Veterans Day, and he's over here like, oh, Army.
Army's ranked 19 or 16. It's a great story.
And nobody thinks Ohio State's winning that game by 40. That's the other thing.
No, I'm not saying that.
I know.
Yeah.
In the wildest dream world, Ohio State wins by 40. It won't happen that way. They might win by 2-3 scores, but I have a hard time believing
is a loss. I won't say 40 because that makes it a little different. Is a loss at the shoe by 3 scores, 17 to 21 points, worse than Notre Dame's loss? I don't think so. Notre Dame lost at home to Northern Illinois.
No, that's absolutely.
But that's
not
what I'm
bad.
saying.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
A 1-loss Indiana would still be ahead of Notre Dame if they get blown out to Ohio State, in my opinion.
If Indiana loses by 40, and again, the dream scenario here, that loss is still not as bad as Notre Dame's loss to NIU at home.
I think when you start getting to 30, you start putting those close.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to talk about, but, I mean, Oregon, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for the rest of the room, but I don't imagine they're going to go undefeated. I think Ohio State's going to beat them in the Big Ten championship. They're 1 point away on the road at night. Texas, they have to play A&M the last week of the season, and they have to play the SEC championship. If they win that one, they're probably going to end up with 2 losses. Penn State's going to be a 1-loss team, but if they lost at home, Indiana will lose on the road.
Yeah.
Indiana should be ahead of them, assuming it's close. Tennessee has 1 loss. They play Georgia this week. Georgia's a 10-point favorite. They're probably going to have 2 losses. BYU, who knows? Notre Dame, who knows? Then everyone else has 2 losses already. Indiana has so much space with that 10-0 record right now that I think they're just fine as long as they beat Purdue.
And it helps that they've been averaging 30-plus points a game, blowing everybody out.
Right, 100%.
They didn't cover against Michigan, but it's still Michigan. That was a game that I'm like, man, Michigan's bad, and if you can't beat Michigan, then you've just taken advantage of playing a very light schedule to this point. But they took care of Michigan. They
got scary at the end. They looked great in the first half.
It did.
But it got scary.
Michigan's defense is for real. That's the one thing about Michigan.
They
That's
have
the
2
one
top
thing,
10 picks.
The defense is fun. That's what I was curious about. Okay, how much when Indiana's offense faces resistance, what are they going to look like? And they still move the ball. They still were. You know what I mean? They still utilize their weapons. They still look like a formidable team out there. And Ohio State's defense, is it as good as Michigan's? I don't think that it is, but I think that they I'm excited. I can't believe I'm saying that I'm excited for Ohio State, Indiana in a few weeks.
Thank God it's a night game.
Oh, we're gonna get to that coming up. Shout out to my guy Joe Klatt, who I usually like. I just don't like in this particular situation, but nonetheless. All right, let's step away for a few moments. We'll stay in the playoff conversation. Second college football playoff rankings come out later on tonight. Of all the teams that are in contention to make the playoff, and of the teams that ultimately make the playoff, how many of those teams are actually national championship contenders? Because there's been years where it's been tough to even put 4 contenders in a 14 playoff field. And now we're going to fill out a 12-team playoff field. How many of those 12 teams that are in the hunt right now are actually good enough to win a national title? We'll discuss when we come back. More Off the Bench next. Ads, and more ads. We welcome you back. Appreciate the ads.
Of course.
Justin Kidder, not JC, but Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. College football playoff rankings come out again later on tonight. Anything we learned last week when those playoff rankings came out? Was there any surprises? Was there anyone that wasn't like me? I was shocked to find out that the rankings and the seeding, and I shouldn't because I comprehend how that works. I guess I was just confused on how the rankings were going to come out.
Yeah.
Were they going to release the rankings based on how you would be seeded, or like March Madness, you have obviously the rankings and then the seeding after? Anything you learned from last week about how they did it, and any key takeaways? What did we learn about how the committee is viewing this field right now?
I don't really know how much we learned until more shakes out. I mean, it certainly taught us a little bit about where they stand with the 2 undefeated teams, Indiana and BYU, but with the losses ahead of them, Miami and Georgia this week, it's a massive shakeup at the top, and we're going to have to see how they re-rank those teams. I wouldn't be surprised if BYU is a little higher than they are on the AP poll, just because they do have that first-round bye, and they're kind of locked into that right now with how the standings are looking. I mean, Colorado all the way down there at 18 is the second Big 12 school, and unless you put Boise, who's 13, up 6 or 7 spots ahead of BYU, I think it's a pretty questionable look, I'd say, to have the 8 or 9 team in that bye slot, especially if they are undefeated. It's a little easier to justify if they have a loss. So I would expect, first and foremost, to see BYU a little higher, maybe even higher than that 7, but at the very least at 7, which is where they are in the AP poll right now. I think Indiana is going to be ahead of Penn State. And the only reason I think that is because Indiana plays Ohio State next week, and I think they're going to make it a 2-4 matchup. We've seen it time and time again in college football. You manufacture matchups, and this isn't even a whole lot of manufacturing. It's an undefeated team and a one-loss team, and you have the one-loss team over them. It makes a ton of sense to flip those teams. If not this week, we'll see it next week before they go into Columbus. I think Indiana is going to be a top 4 team, so you have a top 4 matchup there. I'm really interested to see where Georgia and Miami fall.
Georgia's one of the ones, and again, I'm not the biggest college football guy. You guys know this. But like this playoff is going to be whether or not, and this is why I hated the 4 team, because a lot of it was, in my opinion, we're going to base these off of who we want this team to be, or who we expected this team to be. You can't do it with Georgia this year. Georgia's, I mean, I don't mean to disrespect their guy Carson Beck, but he's looked terrible.
Terrible.
He has looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in Division I college football. He has. He's been abysmal. So how are you going to navigate that with them already losing 2 games this year? Going to be hard for them to fight their way into a conference. It's going to be impossible, right? They couldn't get into a conference.
Oh, they absolutely could.
Oh, it's terrible.
I mean, it would take a good bit, but they could.
It's just unlikely that scenario happens. You're going to be ranking them based on who you think they were coming into the season, or should you rank them on who they are now? And who they are now, at least to me, seems like a pretty damn beatable team.
And well, the problem is, though, if they beat Tennessee this week, they would have beaten Texas and beaten Tennessee, and they would have 2 top 10 wins according to the playoff field at this point. That would be that's something that still weighs heavily in their favor, and they're right there in the mix with all the other 2-loss SEC teams.
If Tennessee does beat Georgia this weekend, which would be a big upset, Georgia's double-digit favorite.
It would be over, right?
For Georgia, absolutely. But I think we got to start asking questions about Texas. Okay. Have to start asking questions about Texas if Georgia loses to Tennessee, because Texas has beaten nobody, 0 ranked wins on the current AP poll, and they lost to Georgia 30-15 at home. If Georgia's not the juggernaut we thought they were, what is Texas? And they don't have a chance to prove anything until that last game against A&M, which decides whether or not they go to the SEC championship. I'm not as in on Texas as I was earlier this year, or really as I watched Georgia keep playing. I don't know how great they really are. And the team that I'm coming back around, and maybe I am a little biased, maybe, I don't know, but that version of Alabama that played this last weekend in Baton Rouge can absolutely win a national championship.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe looked like he was back, at least to a degree. And Alabama has more top 25 wins than the top 5 combined. They have 4 top 25 wins right now. They're beating really good teams, and they're doing it in hard fashion. I mean, they were in that Tennessee game until right at the end in Knoxville. Lost it because Milroe really didn't play very well, and then he goes into Baton Rouge and puts up one of the best games of his career. So Alabama has the ability. They don't control their own destiny, but they have the ability against Mercer at Oklahoma and then the Iron Bowl against Auburn to finish at 10-2. I think that would absolutely lock them into the playoff. I think the question then becomes, if you end up 10-3, losing the SEC championship, what would that mean? But that's a team that's pretty low at 9 that I think has really gotten back into the conversation just with 1 week of how they looked against LSU.
Who would be your top 12? If you were Herb Street tonight, assigning this playoff graphic, who would you have in it?
Oregon 1 seed.
Okay.
So do you want seeding or do you want the ranking?
Seeding.
Okay. Oregon 1 seed. 2 seed would have to be Texas, but they're not going to be ranked 2. I would have them ranked probably 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But just because they're the SEC champion. 3 seed would have to be BYU.
3 seed BYU.
Why
Okay.
them over
Where are you seeing an ACC team?
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
And then 4 seed Boise State.
Man, that's crazy.
No Oregon?
I said Oregon 1 seed.
Oh, my bad. I totally missed the 1 seed one.
Yeah.
So my apologies.
Oregon 1, Texas 2.
Oh, then, yeah.
BYU, the number 7 team at 3, and Boise State, the number 12 team at 4.
That's insane.
It's one of those where even the favorites to win those divisions or conferences are considered bid stealers, and they're the ones that are supposed to, like those 2 teams. I have more of a problem with the conference champions in those conferences getting in the playoff over some of the teams that are going to miss it because they picked up 2 losses in significantly tougher conferences. But 12th team, I'm not going to lose sleep over some of those scenarios. You talked about how you think that's going to project out for the seeding tonight. But I think everyone that was in the top 12 last week remains in the top 12 this week, right? Like, I think Georgia just moves back. I think teams move up and teams
I'm
move
not
back.
sure.
Who would fall out then of Miami and Georgia?
I think Boise State could jump one of those 2 teams.
Miami's fraudulent.
Because
right?
Boise State's 13. Miami's played a billion close games and been bailed out by Cam Ward a billion and a
The
half
playoff
times.
from last week has Boise at 12.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the AP poll from this week.
So, my bad. So I'm looking at last week's poll based on the results from this past week.
I got you.
How will that shuffle that up?
You're right then, looking at the college football playoff poll.
So I don't know who, because again, the teams on the outside, SMU and Texas A&M, LSU lost. There's Texas MA. That was the whole point about the lack of urgency with the regular season.
Yeah.
Because like these top 12 teams, no one's losing sleep over the 13th and 14th team. Seeding is going to be where people kind of get all, their feathers ruffled depending on how those teams shake out. But I'm looking at this. Yeah, like obviously Oregon, Ohio State stay at 1 and 2. Georgia, Miami drop back. Probably what you think Indiana's leapfrogging a lot of those teams to jump in to the top 4?
I think so.
Because they would make the jump. Where the hell are they? Oh, from 8 until. And again, when you have two teams
ranked,
out,
not ranked in the top 4,
seating wise,
but
Seeding.
seeding maybe.
okay. See, that's where I keep getting off.
Yeah,
That's
like,
where I
that's
get
where my
confused,
brain
too. That's
keeps
my-
like
the
doing all
seeding's
these.
throwing me off.
Like
too.
I think Texas should be ranked like 5, but they're the 2 seed because they're the highest ranked I think 1, 2, and 3 should be 1, 2, 3, and 4 should be Big Ten teams.
That's man. It'll be fun. This is why it's fun. Isn't it fun to talk these scenarios? You didn't have these conversations when it was just a 4-team.
We'd be having better conversations. Instead of BYU versus SMU for the 12, we'd be talking about can 2-loss Alabama have a path to get into a 4-team playoff with Oregon and Ohio State, one of them out, playing in the Big Ten, with Texas probably out with a loss. Like, I don't know. These first-round games are going to be fun, and there's certainly more games that are fun to watch on the weekends now. So
A 3-loss team, we won't have a 3-loss team make it this year,
I think we
right?
could.
This year?
Well, what do you mean 3-loss team?
So,
9-3 or
Yeah.
10-3?
Well, 10-3 would be. How would 10-3?
The third loss being a
10-3
conference
being
champion.
10-2 Alabama makes the championship and loses to Texas.
Yeah, you're right. And this was the conversation we were having yesterday
Exactly.
too. It's just how do you?
You can't punish those teams for getting an extra game.
Yeah. For getting to that game, yeah.
Because people forget the year Washington went to the national title game, they lost their conference championship. Right?
Yeah.
Like they lost, and then
Yeah.
they still got in
Lost to Will Howard.
a week later. So now I'm looking at this, and by the way, this field right here, the 4-team playoff, I would love to see what the committee would have done with the 4-team playoff with this. How would a 4-team playoff look right now? Like Oregon, Ohio State, who would be
Texas, just because they have 1 loss.
But see, this is why I would have loved to see how this would shake out with a 4-team playoff, because the committee would have to look at an Indiana. They would have to look at some of these undefeated teams who they said, well, you have to have them in because they're undefeated. They've done that in the past.
I think what we're going to see in this playoff ranking tonight is exactly what we'd see in a 4-team playoff. You hold Indiana out because you have that Ohio State game. It'll make your decision for you.
Yep.
And then you just hold them there at the 5 or 6 because the resume is terrible. And then, if they beat Ohio State, they'll be 1. And if they don't, they'll be 14. I think that's just kind of where they're at. They have a 1-game season.
All right, let's go down this list of the 12 teams that are in the playoff, and I think that the same 12 teams that were in the playoff rankings last week will be right back there this week. I just think they'll be reshuffled a bit just because of the losses with Georgia and Miami. You're not going to knock either of those two out of the playoff field as we sit here now. But how many, and there's been some years with the 4-team playoff where there's a national championship favorite, a competitive second, and then 3 and 4, it's good season, pal, and you slap them on the butt and send them in. But with this 12-team playoff, as dominant as Oregon has been, they're 9-0. I don't put Oregon in that category that we've put number 1 teams in previous years. Like last year's Michigan team, as much as I hate them, they cheated to win a national championship. We all know how talented. I don't think this Oregon team is as good as that Michigan team last year. I don't think this Oregon team is any of those Georgia national championship teams or Alabama or, even the LSU team with Joe Burrow years ago. I think this is a very beatable, undefeated number 1 team in the country. So with that being said, I think there's parity throughout this field. How many of these teams are actual national championship contenders? I think this is probably in quite some time that I can remember. I don't know the last time I could look at college football and say it's wide open.
Yeah.
I do think any of these teams right now that are sitting with 2 losses, Alabama winning it all wouldn't surprise me, right? Like I go down this. Tennessee, maybe a little surprising, wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of teams that I'm like, in any other year I'd count them out, but I think parity across the board. I'm looking at Texas, who looks a little vulnerable right now. I can't say that Oregon is head and shoulders better than that Texas team. I just can't. I can't say that Oregon is head and shoulders better than Tennessee from where I sit. Oregon, Indiana. I would be very intrigued by that matchup. What's the gap between Indiana and a national championship contender? I don't know if Indiana is. I don't think that they are. How many national championship contending teams are actually in this field of 12 for the playoffs right now?
I think it is growing by the week, and it's
Six? I think
it's
I
not
got
because
6.
other teams are playing better. It's because the top's playing worse.
Yeah.
I think everyone's coming together, and that's making the group a little bit bigger. Oregon for sure. Ohio State for sure. I think you have to put Texas in there, at least at this point.
Yep.
What about?
Then you skip over Penn State and Indiana. I'm personally going to skip over Tennessee. I think Nico has been way too up and down. That offense is not reliable if you can stop
How bad
the
was
run.
his injury last? I know he got out. They put the backup
They
in.
said he's going to play this week.
Okay.
Not entirely sure if he's going to be 100%. I don't think BYU can. I am going to put 8 and 9 in there. I think Notre Dame's playing a level of football right now I absolutely think can win a national championship. Riley Leonard's been killing it on the ground, and that's the thing we knew he had to add in order to take that offense to the next level. And I think Alabama has certainly shown flashes of being a national championship team this year. If they can string it together for 4 games, they can absolutely make that run. And I'm probably tapping out.
I think I could include Georgia.
Just because it wouldn't surprise you.
Just because it wouldn't surprise
Okay,
me. But
that's fair.
I will
I'll throw
say
Georgia
this.
in there.
I'm glad I cashed out of my Georgia future.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I cashed out of that for a
I'd throw
50-cent
Georgia in there
loss.
because it certainly wouldn't surprise me either. But
But-
any other team would be a surprise to me. And it's crazy that we're sitting here with a 12-team playoff talking about an undefeated Indiana, an undefeated BYU, Boise State making it, SMU making it, and we're left with the 5 Blue Bloods.
Which team is more susceptible to an upset in that first round?
In the first round,
Yeah,
so excluding the conference champions?
correct.
I mean, I think Tennessee could absolutely get beat in Knoxville.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, that defense carries them. If you can run on them, I think you can beat Tennessee in Knoxville. You could confuse Nico if they play a good defense. The last week's playoff ranking had Indiana going to Knoxville. I don't think Indiana would get that win. But I think if that shook out differently and a Notre Dame or an Alabama went there, or, I don't want to say Boise State, but who knows? I think one of those teams could absolutely get the win.
We've seen Boise play Oregon really tough. And
Right
that was
down to the
months
wire.
ago. They played. I mean, Oregon. We thought they were going to get upset to kick off the season right off the bat in their inaugural season in the Big Ten. They overcame that. But the one thing that Boise is interesting. I don't think Boise can win a national championship, but Boise could be the one.
They can ruin someone's party. Yeah.
In the first 12-team playoff field, because everyone said, including me, there won't be Cinderella runs in college football. There won't be that March Madness vibe of the little guy making a run. The one reason why I can look at Boise and say that they're built to do it is because they have Jesus. I always say his name. Gene T. It was Gene for a while. Now it's Gene T. So I don't know, but we'll go with Gene T.
I thought it was Gene T.
Yeah. So Gene T, the running back, a Heisman contender, no doubt. When you have a running back as dominant as him and a defense that is very serviceable, if Boise controls the tempo of any game, if you continue to pound the rock, you continue to control time of possession, I think that puts them in position to be able to hang with anyone to make it interesting late into a game. Now, that's why I do like the aspect of protecting those higher seeds by them getting a first-round game on their home field. That definitely helps when it's all said and done. But, yeah, I agree with you guys. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, I wouldn't have said a few weeks ago, but they've been just laying it on teams.
Riley Leonard is starting to play like what they recruited Riley Leonard to play like.
Yeah.
And he wasn't early this year. Even in the games they were winning early this year, he didn't look great. There were a chance to bench him at some early home games, and it was really ugly, but he's been a monster on the ground. I think they're going to have a struggle if another fan base comes into Notre Dame in the first round. Yep. I think they're one of very few teams that could potentially benefit from going on the road with a little less pressure. Because I think if another fan base comes in, and talk about who you're playing in the first round. You're playing a Tennessee, an Alabama, a Texas, an Ohio State, an Oregon, a Penn State, like rabid fan bases. If one of those fan bases comes in and takes over Notre Dame Stadium, and those old fans like to sit down all game or drowned out by an away fan base, I think it could get to those players. Notre Dame could be caught off guard in the first round game at home. I think that is something to keep an eye on as this progresses, because obviously they can't get that bye. If they win out, they will be a playoff team, and they will either play at home or on the road in the first round. And I think they're a team that's going to struggle unless they go to one of those magical places that I think can be upset, because I don't think there's many. I think a lot of these teams at the top, if they play at home in the first round, are going to be able to take care of business pretty easily. The best case scenario for Notre Dame, and honestly the best case scenario for any team, is to end up in that 5 spot and play the 12 seed group of 5, and then you play the worst conference champion that's massively overseeded. That's Notre Dame's best shot, but that's any team's best shot.
So we have 5 teams that are that we would consider national championship contenders. That's why I wish the 4 team was around this year.
Yeah.
Because I'm going back, I'm looking at the field over the years. There has not been a season where there was more than 2 national championship contenders just based on the 4-team field. And the committee, I said last year was the only time the committee that their feet was held to the fire where they had to make a tough decision. They had to make that. That year that they put the Bearcats in, everyone's like, well, they had a tough decision to make to put the Bearcats in. No. Ohio State made it easy. When they got that 3rd loss, they made it easy for them they had to put an undefeated Bearcat team in. Had Ohio State beat Michigan and won the Big Ten title, they're in. There's no question about it.
Everyone says it was such an easy choice. Oklahoma State was a quarter of a yard away from keeping UC out.
Yeah.
And we knew Cincinnati wasn't a national championship contender. They got into the playoff. But yeah, the committee would have really had to look at a Texas this year, or they would have to look at an Oregon or Ohio State. They would have to look at one of those teams, quite a few of those teams, and say, not only are you not not only are you not having a chance to fight for a national championship, you're not even in the playoff.
The other thing that's getting overlooked in this conversation is everyone's talking about the 12-team playoff and how it's nice to have all these other teams in and laugh at everyone who says it's a bad system. It's great. It's making college football more fun. The part of the system that was really the worst to me and everyone else that hated the 12-team playoff expansion is something that's causing a lot of problems right now and people aren't overlooking. These teams are not playing each other. They're not. You're going to have a 6-way tie at the top of the SEC potentially with basically none of the teams playing each other. And you can't use head-to-head. You have to use conference record, in which case a team like LSU could finish above Alabama when Alabama went into Baton Rouge and won. In the Big Ten, you have Oregon, who only plays Ohio State. They don't even play Penn State or Indiana, the other 2 top teams in the conference. The loss of divisions was good because that helped get the 2 best teams to the conference championship, which is of utmost importance. But they need to expand these conference schedules. We don't need Marshall and Akron. We don't need Mercer in the middle of November playing Alabama. We need more conference games. These conferences are too big. The top teams have to be playing each other. We need to play more conference games. It's a big problem.
I agree 100%, and that's one reason why when everyone talked about down the road if the Power Fours branch off, well, what about and no offense to these schools, but what about the Bowling Greens? What about the Miami of Ohio's? What about the smaller schools? And at a certain point, it's survival of the fittest. And to me, that's why I always get annoyed with college athletics in general when the whole premise of the existence of a Bowling Green and others is based on them being paid by Ohio State to come in to get their tails whooped. You're not a real business at that point.
Yeah.
That's my biggest frustration with all of that is life's a relay race and you're only as fast as your slowest runner. Well, they're slowing everyone down because to me, if that's the reason why we're not going more conference games, I have a problem with that. To me, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, everyone would benefit more from getting better matchups early in the season playing within your conference than just paying the little guy to come in. And plus, it's just better business. It would save schools money. You wouldn't have to spend money to bring teams in to come whoop on them for a little bit. But, all right, we'll step away for a few moments. Ohio State, Indiana, the kickoff time for that was announced yesterday. And I've been screaming from the mountaintops about how much I hate the big noon kickoff more than anybody out there. I felt like I was on an island, and I feel like everyone had hit their breaking point yesterday as Ohio State, Indiana announced for a noon kick. I believe they're 6th straight, right, Jacob? 6th straight?
They will end the season on 6 straight.
6 straight,
So including Michigan coming up around the corner.
I hate the big noon kickoff. We'll discuss that when we come back. As a fan, primetime games, to me, primetime is at night under the lights. When Ohio State has a big game, and by the way, I keep saying Ohio State, just put your team or any team in this particular situation.
But that's the thing, is other fan bases aren't in this situation.
That's a valid point, because Fox stinks. I don't like
Fox.
Fox.
If we're going to put the blame on Fox, let's put it on the guy we got to put the blame on.
Oh, yeah, give him a round of applause.
Kevin freaking Warren is the one to blame for all of this. And everyone's coming at Fox and Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson. Kevin Warren signed a horrendous TV deal to get a massive contract and go to the Chicago Bears and say, here, look what I got for the Big Ten. Sign me to be your president. And that's exactly what happened. And he left the Big Ten and Tony Petitti with one of the worst TV contracts in all of sports. It's big-time money. but it takes away the greatest part of college football for a lot of these teams, and that's primetime night games.
So I love noon kickoff. I still think about, when I wake up in the morning, I love to have watching the Big Ten as the first game of my day. Saying that, Ohio State getting 6 straight Big 12 or a big what is it called?
Yeah,
Big noon kickoff. Sorry,
Big Buckeye kickoff.
Yeah, Ohio State having 6 straight noon kickoffs. It's tough. I'm not an Ohio State fan, but having one of the biggest brands in the country consistently not play primetime games.
Oh, it is primetime. Joel Klatt made it very, very clear that it is primetime.
Yeah, but it's not. It seems to be an issue. And I think, it's great that what McAfee's doing. It's great with all these teams are doing. Let's get up early. We love college game day, yada, yada, yada. We also love the night games. So why don't we have, a big night kickoff? Why don't we have a 7 p.m. night kickoff? And we could do a 30-minute show in between games. I don't know. There has to be another solution because you're starting to piss everybody off with every single big game happening before you have lunch.
A lot of people point to the scheduling and everything like that and say it's just what the Big Ten had. Night games are better for the in-person experience. That's just a fact. I don't know that that's necessarily debatable in college football. You have the lights and the sounds and everything in these stadiums. It's an unbelievable experience to go to a night game. And I know that this is getting massive ratings, and that's what they keep pointing to is Big Noon Kickoff keeps delivering while we put these big games there. So why wouldn't we? I feel like you're focusing too much on the TV product. You have to focus on the game of football at some point. And having no night games in the shoe is not good for the sport of college football. It's an incredible atmosphere in one of the best stadiums in the sport to watch at night, and you're taking that away. It doesn't happen anymore, which is so frustrating. And the other thing, everyone just points to, the fans are just mad they can't drink in the parking lot all day. You wake up early and go to the game, stop crying and complaining. Well, it also kills recruiting. You know how hard it is to get people to fly from the West Coast or from Florida in on a Saturday for a noon game?
Yeah.
9 a.m. local for the West Coast? It is brutal to get recruits from out of state in here for a noon kickoff game, especially against an Indiana or a top-tier program. And the Penn State game was at noon. I'm sure they had the same struggles. I'm just not as dialed into that fan base and the reporters there. It is brutal to get recruits in for official visits and stuff along those lines with noon games. You have to have night games in order to get the ball rolling on that kind of stuff. It's insane that they keep doing this to Ohio State especially, because that's the biggest brand and the biggest team that you have on your network.
Yeah, and that's the disconnect that I'm sure we're running into with a lot of people right now who are tuning into this. You're probably saying, oh, poor Ohio State, they're always whining, they're always crying. To be fair, that fan base, I get why it weighs on a lot of people. Ohio State always does seem to be complaining about something. This is probably the most valid thing that I can agree with Buckeye fans of their frustration. So with this, it is an isolated situation. It's an isolated team situation. I know Joe Klatt countered with somebody the other day in a rebuttal that, last year Michigan was the team that was out there for every single week. But that's the thing with the Big Ten. It's always going to be Ohio State or it's always going to be Michigan. Those two programs are the face of the Big Ten. Now, you could say Oregon and USC, UCLA, and Washington who just come over. Washington's been a playoff team a few times. USC is one of the biggest brands in football. Oregon's the number 1 team in the country. But here's the problem. Those schools play out on the West Coast. So when they kick off for their big noon kickoff, that's 9 a.m. their time. So no, they will never have to host a big noon kickoff. They're going to get that advantage every time that they have a big-time primetime matchup or a heavyweight matchup. If they're at home, they're never going to have a big noon kickoff. They're going to get the evening kickoff because they're not going to make those West Coast schools do the big 9 a.m. kickoff when it's all said and done. I've seen some people say, Ohio State, shut up. You got to play Oregon under the lights. Yes, it wasn't at the shoe, but you still got to play Oregon under the lights. Once again, if Oregon was at Ohio State, if that matchup back in October 12th happened in Columbus, I promise you that would have been a big noon kickoff. If Oregon was at Ohio State this year, that would have been a big noon kickoff. That's why the Penn State game, there was no time restrictions there. Big noon kickoff. Every big game for Ohio State will always be at noon. They play Texas next year at the shoe. That will be a big noon kickoff, and that's unfortunate. Texas-Ohio State should be a game under the lights. Texas-Oregon should have been under the lights. It wasn't under the lights for the right reason. It was only under the lights because they weren't going to make Oregon kick off at 9 a.m. This Indiana game, can't believe I'm getting all pissed off about an Indiana game, but this is a third top 5 matchup of the season for the Buckeyes, and they have to play at noon. You guys may not feel bad for him. That's fine. But I still think it's wrong. And because from the business aspect. So, Casey, go ahead and pop up the Joel Klatt response. here, as he started defending his network when it was all said and done. Joe Klatt tweets and responds that lots of talk about the big noon Saturday. Here's some things I think you should know. By the way, love Joe Klatt, very intelligent. I'm a big fan of his. I'm anti-Joe Klatt over the last couple of days. He says, Big Noon Saturday has been the most watched college football window for the last few years. Last year, our window averaged almost 7 million viewers a game. Prior to Big Noon, this window in college football was non-existent. If you go on to the next one, Joe Klatt then, after, again, a series of tweets, was there another one?
I do have
Yep. So there's quite a few tweets that go throughout this thread, but he follows it up by saying, I love this sport, and I'm committed to showcasing the incredible environments, programs, and players that make our sport so incredible. You will find me and the entire hardworking Fox Sports Big Noon crew wherever we are sent, celebrating this great sport and its amazing fans. Great. We're celebrating the amazing fans, all while you're continuing to have a long thread of tweets telling all the fans why they're wrong because you're making money.
Hardworking crew, some real electric calls last week from Gus.
Oh, how about Gus, who's usually electric, but he seemed bored as hell.
They hate Ohio State. And I don't know why, but they both hate Ohio State.
And it doesn't make any sense to me. Joe Klatt, I know that the numbers are good. The numbers are good because you keep throwing Ohio State in there every single week. My problem with this, was it the Big Ten media deal or was it the Ohio State media deal? Because if I'm Ross Bjork, the athletic director at Ohio State, I'm on the phone immediately saying, hey, we're going to get a cut of that. We need more. If you're going to put us on every single week, it is no longer the Big Noon Kickoff tied with the Big Ten Network. It's just the Big Noon Kickoff featuring the Ohio State Buckeyes every week. That's a problem. 6 straight weeks. I don't know how you fix it. They already signed the contract, but there should be a limit of how many times a team is featured, because to me, they are totally taking advantage of the Ohio State situation. Joe Klatt, you brag about all those numbers. Throw Iowa, Maryland in that damn time slot. Let's see if you get that 7 million viewers. I promise you that will not happen. Man, Joe Klatt takes me off.
I saw a lot of Ohio State fans in the replies to that tweet saying, if you're going to play us on all these games, then we should be getting a bigger chunk of the money than the other teams that are also benefiting from the Big Noon Kickoff contract. If we're the ones forced to play these games at noon and they get to play their night games, why are we getting the same amount of money as them? Joe Klatt's response was, we went to Michigan 18 times in the last however many years. Do you think they should get more money too? Trying to dunk on the Ohio State fans? Yeah. All the Ohio State fans replied, they were like, yeah.
Yes.
They
absolutely.
should. That's exactly how it should work. Sorry, Joel, but that's exactly how it should work. You are riding the coattails of the major programs in the Big Ten, of which there are not many. You are broadcasting Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State at noon to salvage the ratings of a window that no one wants to watch. People want the big games at night. People want to wake up at 9, watch game day, cruise into Missouri versus Arkansas, and then get up for the 3:30 window with the marquee games at night. That's what people want. I don't understand why they keep doing it, and hopefully right now it's getting loud enough that they might make a change.
And here's the deal too.
I think they're locked into or backed into a corner now. I think people are going to watch.
1 a year.
They're going to watch. I know. Yeah.
I'm not asking for 4 or 5 night games. Give me one major night game a year.
Leave Texas alone next year.
Would you rather have Texas at night or Penn State at night? I'd rather have Penn State at night.
I think because it's
if
new
it's
Texas, but I see what. Yeah, can't go.
Just
give us
Penn
one
State's
of those.
at this year next year.
Elliot, what were you saying?
I was just. It's like. It's great to have the Big Noon Kickoff in the sense that you get to start your day with an elite matchup. But it's also like it's the same way why and people have different opinions on this. It's why dinner is the best meal. It's why you have all these things leading up to it. And you have a big dinner at night.
A Pop-Tart, a sandwich, a steak.
Yeah,
you can't take the steak at noon.
Correct. Yeah, you don't get the steak at noon. The lunch is different than the night from the dinner. So you want to start your day with some good games, and then you want to end it with the best games. And if you have the best games, they should be not starting at noon. It just doesn't make sense to do it every single time. Like Jacob said, you can do it a couple times, but like this is
do it 10 times.
Several massive games that have been played at noon. I shouldn't have to miss the first quarter of Penn State, Ohio State because I just don't want to turn on my TV at noon. Like it's like I want to that's how I watch football. I watch some good games while not really paying attention. The noon slates,
a little groggy.
Yeah, the noon slates just perusing around. Then you get to the 4:30 game. It's like, all right, let's go get some food and we'll come back for the night game. You have all your friends over and you watch the big game. That's what it is. That's what sports is. That's what it's always been. And to have them continually not do that is strange.
And here's the deal too. I would be angry about this, but Joel Klatt pissed me off with trying to justify it. Joel, of course, by the way, I'd like Joel Klatt, but Joel, what was he doing before the big noon kickoff? What was he doing before that started?
I don't know.
Because it was all about the Kirk Herbstreaks and the Fowlers and all the, it was all the big name ESPN broadcasters. It's not like Joel Klatt was very well known across all circles. We knew who he was, yes, but he wasn't as big a figure back then before the big noon kickoff came along. And no wonder he doesn't want it to stop. No wonder he doesn't want anything like, I want to celebrate the fans. The same fans that he's making money off of by continuously taking advantage of the Ohio State situation. By the way, the big noon kickoff is not about the biggest games at noon. It's just about the biggest brand at noon, because if you cared about the best games, you would take two lesser brands that would be a more competitive game as opposed to watching Ohio State bludgeon some bad sick Purdue team at noon. Stop it. Ohio State Purdue's not a big noon kickoff. Ohio State kicking the ass of Northwestern this Saturday. That's not a big noon kickoff. That's just, hey, Ohio State has a big brand. Tune in, Buckeye fans. That's what it is. They're not like ESPN puts the best games at night. ESPN before, when they were doing the primetime games, it wasn't Ohio State against Miami of Ohio. No offense to them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's Ohio State against Texas, Ohio State against Penn State, Ohio State against competitive teams. But stop trying to convince me that the best game of the weekend for the big noon kickoff is Ohio State Northwestern. It's not. You are simply taking advantage of the fan base of Ohio State, which, by the way, is why these conferences are rumored to start branching off, because some schools and programs are bigger than the brand and sport itself. Ohio State's one of those. It is what it is. Rant over unless you have anything to
Just
add.
briefly, while you just mentioned it there, and we can talk about it off radio if we're too far over, but they posted what the field looks like in Wrigley for the Ohio State-Northwestern matchup this weekend. Number one, looks awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be incredible. Number two, those end zones are in the first row of the stands. Someone is going to die. Jeremiah Smith's going to run a corner and end up in row 5.
I got to see the picture now.
I'll send it to Casey and we can get it up there after the radio break.
Sounds good, but tune in to check it all out. The big noon kickoff. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the Northwestern, whatever the hell they are.
Wildcats.
Wildcats. There you go. All right, dudes, we're done on radio. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, staying, of course, here on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Woo. Yeah.
Here we go.
Sorry, guys. You missed Jake just bragging about all the cool football games. I haven't missed Ohio State, Michigan since I was, winning national championships in Alabama.
That is not what I said. That is not what I said. No, but as an Ohio State fan, it's nice to be home now and be able to drive the hour and go up and see some games. There's nothing better than being geographically close to the teams you root for, and I very, very firmly believe that.
Yeah, I don't go, well, for one, I work every Saturday for the pregames and all that stuff too, but, I really missed the opportunity to go watch Ohio State Purdue and Ohio State Northwestern.
Well, you probably get back by the time work starts.
When do you leave for Chicago?
Friday after work.
Okay. I like that.
Now, you were talking about so Wrigley Field is hosting Northwestern Ohio State this Saturday.
That's right. Yep. Ohio State, Northwestern Stadium under construction. They're playing by the river. So when Ohio State comes to town, you need some more stands than that. So they're playing at Wrigley. And first thing I saw when I looked at this was, wow, that looks really cool. The grass looks great. Can't see the dirt at all. That's always the concern about a football field in a baseball stadium, is that you'll see the dirt. It looks great. They did a really good job. And then I started looking at that Northwestern end zone on the left side. Not as much the Wildcats one on the back side, because you have that little bit of space in front of the Jumbotron there, but that Northwestern end zone on the short side of your screen, that top corner is in the stands.
So that's going to be like Could you? I mean,
that is in the
Like
stands.
Derek Jeter diving into
Yes!
the third row to get
like
a catch.
if you have to catch a ball, like tiptoe the back of the end zone over the shoulder, it's gonna hit the bleachers.
The offensive coordinators have to draw up and red zone routes only between the hashes.
They've done bowl
Like, you
games.
can't get guys hurt.
Yeah.
They've done bowl games at Yankee Stadium. Is that a similar setup?
That I do not know.
Where it's hugging. I feel like I think at Yankee
I know the Coliseum
Stadium,
is ridiculously big, so that's not a fair
Yeah, because I thought that they brought bleachers out to the outfield and did the football field out there.
That's what
versus
I expected.
hugging the stands. Like they are
Whenever
hugging.
whenever they play at Fenway, I thought it was more open.
It's in the outfield.
Yeah,
Because that's where Oakland was.
yeah.
Because the dirt like cut off the.
But see, if they just put bleachers out there, the whole reason they're putting it at Wrigley is
Fenway's way better.
Yeah.
like they're just trying to take advantage of the stadium seating. The bleacher seating would give them the equivalent to what they're probably getting at their makeshift stadium now while they're getting their new stadium built.
That stadium looks really cool.
It actually looks pretty.
It looks
it's off the-
really.
yeah.
It looks beautiful. It's just you can't.
It-
Can't have
it-
12,000
it-
seats for
It
Big Ten
fits
games.
those rowdy Northwestern Wildcat
Yeah.
fans. It doesn't, for Ohio State, but is what it is.
I say they'll win this game by what, 35?
haven't seen the line.
I'm not worried that they're going to lose by any means. Northwestern is one of the worst teams in all of college football. But 29-point favorites, I'm not exactly jumping on that line.
I think I'm going to jump on it.
I am more power to you. But
With the way that field is, get a comfortable 3-possession lead.
you got
and just be
Indiana. You got
careful.
Indiana next week,
Yep.
and with one loss already, you got no wiggle room.
It's weird
I
saying
think
Northwestern
we're
is a
looking at
trap
2-week
game.
prep here.
Northwestern's a trap game for Indiana. That just doesn't sound
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to be completely honest with you as well. When I said Northwestern was one of the worst teams in the country, I did not expect to click on them and see that they're 4-5. So,
Well, they're bad.
really don't like that 29 now.
They're bad in spirit. Let me ask you this, kind of back to the other topic. Would you rather have, as Ohio State fans, would you rather have that Michigan game be at night or at noon? Because I think that one.
I'm in the
Elliot,
minority.
I will shoot somebody. Kidding.
Jesus.
Respectfully,
If they move that game off of
shoot
noon.
them with love.
Oh, you like it at noon. See, I knew I was in the
If Ohio
minority.
State Michigan is ever off of noon or the Iron Bowl is ever off of 3:30, there is going to be riots.
See now, why? Just because I'm curious, why do you say that? Because
Tradition.
Just history.
just history.
It's always been at noon.
Okay, all right.
Well, here's the deal. I hate that it's at noon. I think if it's the biggest rivalry in all of sports, it should be treated as such, not as the big noon kickoff. It should be put under the lights. I know it never will be. I'll never win that argument. At the very least, 3:30. Get the best of both worlds. You still get that day game
Yep.
kickoff the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then it kind of fit. The highlight, the peak of the game finishes at night. Harbaugh was at Michigan the last time that they did the 3:30 kick, right? I swear one of those games ended like at night. Under the light. I mean, it's been a while since they did a 3:30 kick. It'll never move off noon. That's not a hill I'm willing to die on, that it shouldn't be at noon. I would personally prefer it be at night. I would love to see that game at night, but I have like a big old poster in my office of the last time that those two teams played when it was dark out, but nonetheless.
Mr. Moe says the last time the two teams played not at noon was 06.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was Troy Smith?
Yeah, 1 versus 2.
Huh. So there was I guess it was just a dark, cloudy day.
Well, now David Shaw says 2016 was 3:30, so we got conflicting reports in our chat.
2016, I think it was the 3:30. I think that was the.
That was Curtis Samuel.
Yeah. That game was wild.
That was nuts.
That was the.
That was the most fun game ever.
All right. Well, what else we got? Anything to close out?
Yeah, I have one
I
thing
know
I wanted to
Casey
touch
has
on.
something too. So.
You got something?
No. Yeah, I do.
No?
More,
Yeah?
I do have something just because.
Go for it.
There was some really. It's the last thing I want to close off with. 'Cause
Okay.
It's sad.
I got
So,
you. All right.
Whatever you got.
The news we didn't touch on yesterday, but something bubbling up big in college football, high school recruiting.
Okay.
Bryce Underwood, the #1 quarterback in the country, #1 player in the country, top recruit in the class of 2025, going to be a freshman next year. He's been recruited and committed to LSU for many, many years now. But if you remember back a couple months ago, Dave Portnoy, big-time Michigan fan, made some comments that he would be willing to donate a big sum of money to get top recruits to Michigan, top quarterback recruits to Michigan. Bryce Underwood, the #1 recruit in the country, from Michigan, plays his high school football there. Michigan fans have packed out their home games, chanting for him to stay home, really pretty openly trying to recruit this kid to switch from LSU to Michigan. None of that's illegal. Fans can do whatever they want, obviously, and it only ever gets questionable when coaches start to step in. Obviously, a guy who's not employed by Michigan but has a lot of connections to the program, Connor Stallions. Connor Stallions was Michigan, obviously, sign-stealing aficionado.
Successful high school football coach.
That's right. I think he was the defensive coordinator and interim coach for another high school in Michigan this year, and the 3 scores I saw were 42-0, 49-0, and 56-0. So a real good guy. And upstanding citizen, follows all the rules, and a great high school football coach, exactly who I'd want around my kids. But Bryce Underwood's high school has signed Connor Stallions to be their play caller and assistant coach for the playoff run. So the last 4 or 5 games before Bryce Underwood is expected to head off to LSU for his college career, Connor Stallions has been brought in to coach that team.
He's still a rogue Michigan football employee, right?
Yeah, 100%.
This is why last year, and I think Shaw, who is, if he's still in the chat, him and I would get into it all the time on the show in Dayton about this. He said Michigan didn't cheat to win that national championship because they got rid of Stallions in the middle of the season, as if they just cut off all communications with them. As if all the work that he did to steal the signs wasn't left behind.
He was front row at the Rose Bowl in the national championship.
And by the way, I've said this before too.
Sitting with ex-players.
If Ohio State or anybody has a chance to win a national championship, and that national championship opportunity got thrown out the window because someone went rogue, me, all the fans, all the players, the coaching staff should hate that individual for truly going rogue and putting them at risk of a suspension or not being eligible for the playoff or a chance to win a national championship or what have you. They should be mad at him. They weren't mad at him because I think there was always a plan for how to deal with getting caught. And I think that they executed that plan perfectly. And I still think he works rogue for the university, under the table, of course, because Michigan is a very upstanding, high moral values program.
At least Sharon is doing great.
I mean, he needs a quarterback. That thing's gone about as bad as what you'd expect it to.
If Ryan Day was born on 3rd, then Sharon Moore was born at home or in a hospital, nowhere near a baseball.
Sharon Moore bunted with he bunted with 2 strikes and it struck out going foul. Like that's basically what happened there.
Sharon Moore is 2023 Javi Baez.
I like that comparison. I like that a lot.
He was a good OC. He was a good shortstop in Chicago. Can't do it in Detroit.
But, all right, everyone got their Casey, wrap us up today.
Yeah, just some sad news, FC fans. I know we don't have very many of those in our chat, but unfortunately, Mark Angulo, he did pass away Monday night due to complications with his injuries that he sustained last month in a different country. Just thought that we should cover that and just give our condolences out to his family and to FC and the FC fan base. I know that that's just sad and kind of out of nowhere, out of the blue, because I thought all signs pointed that they were recovering, that he was recovering, and I guess that's not the case. So just thought I'd throw that out there and give our condolences out.
And that was announced this morning?
That was announced this morning, yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right, that wraps it up for us. Anything else as we close out the show?
No.
I think we're good.
We'll
Chatterbox Bengals tonight.
What?
Chatterbox Bengals tonight.
Oh,
there is something else. There's always something else. Chatterbox Bengals tonight.
You and my friend Craig gonna be
me and Kinner's brother.
Yeah. You know?
Kinner's bestie. I heard Kinner and Craig have a Snapchat streak.
Xavier plays. Do they really have a Snapchat streak
with Craig?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. I heard someone was telling me that.
I saw this little nugget yesterday from Paul, and this is how we'll end it. Xavier is playing a team, Jackson State.
Oh yeah, this is
in
good.
basketball. They don't have.
Make Kinner guess.
They don't guess when the next time they play a home game is. They haven't played one this season.
They're 0-2, haven't played a home game.
Jackson State or Xavier?
Jackson State. Guess the next time they play a home game.
I'm gonna say February.
Well, it's too far. But January. January is the next time that Jackson State plays a home game. They don't play a home game for the first 11
January
games. First 11 games of their season.
But they play games just on the road?
Yeah.
All on the road. Everything's on the road.
All right. That doesn't make any sense. Why?
Well, I'd imagine
they're
just on a money wagon. They're just trying to get as much money as they can. Have everybody just bring in Jackson State to town. It's like the Globetrotters.
Jackson State's going to be the richest mid-major of all time.
Seriously, it's like the Globetrotters if the Globetrotters couldn't play basketball.
The players calling the 80, can we please just come? I miss my family. Can we please just come home? The 80 is just Scrooge McDuck off a diving board into just a pile of gold. He's just rolling in it. 11 straight road games. That's crazy.
Speaking of Globetrotters who can't play basketball, I have to show you the video of me playing for the Globetrotters, dude.
That's a good
coming
video.
because we get closer. As we get closer to the Globetrotters, they're playing in Dayton. They play in Dayton every year at the Nutter Center. I don't know if they make their way over this way.
You think you could let me suit up for call on your connections, let me suit up for the Generals? I have no interest in playing for the Globetrotters.
Yeah.
But I would love to play for the Generals.
I was 2 for 3.
I love
Got
that.
a layup, mid-range jumper.
Did you steal Special K's jersey? What was your nickname?
I don't know. They tried to make me dance, and I wasn't about that
Oh,
life.
you're not a dancer?
I wasn't about that life. I was like, I came here to ball. I came here to play ball, not to dance around. Take it serious.
That's right.
Let's go get a win.
Of course.
But
Final news.
what we got?
Fetters broke this. Isaiah Pacheco may resume practicing soon. They will be taking him off the IR. I didn't think he was going to come back this season, if we're going to be honest, after he fractured his, fibula or tibia or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, huh?
I
Yeah.
do have Kareem Hunt in fantasy, so that's a devastating blow to
He
me.
won't play this week. That's just opening the 21-day window.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it.
Well, that wraps it up for us. And until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. What?
Presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Presented.